Based on real events and whispered rumors from the shadow of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, this is the story of the man who swam in the most dangerous body of water on Earth, and paid the price. What happened to him after stepping into the forbidden lake remains one of the most unsettling mysteries tied to the lingering ghost of radiation. It was the summer of 2005, nearly 2 decades after the Chernobyl disaster turned an ordinary Soviet town into a monument of silence. The exclusion zone had been abandoned by its people, but not by the curious, not by the reckless. The air was heavy with history, with the kind of stillness that made you feel as if the ground itself was holding its breath. For most, that feeling was enough to keep them away. But for Anton S., it was an invitation. Anton was 31 years old, a former lifeguard from Kiev. Tall, athletic, and confident to the point of arrogance. He had grown up hearing about the disaster on television, about the invisible killer that spread across the land and water, yet to him it was just that, invisible. He believed danger was only real if you could see it. In his mind, radiation was nothing but a ghost story adults told to keep children in line. That summer, he joined a group of urban explorers planning to enter the zone. They carried cameras, masks, and an endless supply of adrenaline. Anton carried something else, a dare he had been preparing for weeks. There was a place he had heard about in whispered conversations and half-forgotten rumors, a massive lake less than a kilometer from reactor number 4. Once a cooling reservoir for the power plant, it was said to be one of the most contaminated bodies of water in the world. Locals called it the Black Mirror, for its glass-like surface that reflected the sky with perfect clarity. No birds flew over it. No wind seemed to ripple it. Those who knew its history avoided even looking at it for too long. When the group reached the edge of the reservoir, the sun was just beginning to rise. The light slid across the water in a slow, cold shimmer, turning it into a sheet of liquid metal. Anton stood there, stripping down to his shorts, while the others hesitated. One of his friends muttered that people had disappeared here, that divers sent to inspect the lake floor had returned shaking, their skin pale, swearing they felt hands pulling them downward. Another claimed the fish here had no eyes, their bodies warped and twisted by decades of exposure. Anton laughed at them all. "If you can't see it," he said, "it can't hurt you." Without another word, he stepped into the water. It welcomed him with an unnatural warmth, as if it had been heated from deep below. Thin streams of vapor curled into the morning air, carrying with them the faint metallic scent of rust and decay. He waded in, the water thick and heavy around his legs, until it was deep enough to dive. The moment his head went under, the world changed. The water muffled all sound, leaving only the slow thud of his heartbeat. Visibility was almost zero. It was like swimming through liquid smoke. At first, he swam with long, powerful strokes, his muscles slicing through the dark. But the deeper he went, the more he felt the water pushing back against him, not in waves, but as if it were thickening around his body. Halfway across the reservoir, a strange tingling began to spread over his skin. It wasn't the gentle prick of goosebumps, it was sharper, almost like the sting of electricity. His chest tightened. His mouth filled with the bitter, copper taste of metal. He coughed, swallowing a mouthful of warm water that clung to his tongue like oil. Something brushed his ankle. He kicked hard, but the darkness below remained unbroken. Then came the sound, a low, vibrating hum that seemed to rise from the depths. At first, he thought it was an echo from the ruined reactor, but the tone was too alive. It pulsed, steady and deep, as though something beneath the lake was breathing. Against all instinct, Anton glanced down. The shadows that were moving, slow and deliberate, shapes too large and too deep to be fish. He forced himself to look away and keep swimming. By now, his arms felt heavier with each stroke, the strength draining from him at an unnatural pace. His breathing grew ragged, panic clawing at the edges of his mind. The water felt thicker, resisting every movement, and with every second, the shore seemed farther away. It was as if the lake itself was holding him back. When he finally reached the opposite bank, Anton dragged himself out onto the cracked concrete, collapsing in a fit of violent coughing. His skin was flushed red, already mottled in patches. His friends, pale and silent, gathered around him. The metallic scent was stronger now, clinging to him like a second skin. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice was weak, shaking. Within hours, his eyes turned bloodshot. His gums began to bleed. He shivered in the humid summer air as though trapped in winter. By nightfall, he couldn't stand without help. They carried him to their van under the cover of darkness, bypassing checkpoints to avoid questions. At a hospital in Kiev, the doctors who examined him were stunned. His radiation exposure levels were catastrophic, far beyond anything they had seen outside of the disaster's original night. It was as though he had stood at the very heart of reactor number 4. Over the next few days, Anton's body began to betray him. His hair fell out in thick clumps, leaving raw, sensitive skin behind. Strange lesions bloomed across his chest and back. He complained of searing headaches and nightmares that left him gasping. Always the same dream, sinking into black water, weightless, as something unseen wrapped around his limbs and pulled him down. 2 weeks later, Anton was gone. The official report cited acute radiation syndrome. His friends, however, tell a different story. They say in his final days, his skin had taken on a strange, grayish translucence. Under certain light, you could see the faint pattern of veins like dark rivers beneath the surface, as though he was becoming part of the lake. Today, the cooling reservoir still lies there, silent and perfect, reflecting the clouds above. The water looks harmless, even beautiful. But those who know better keep their distance. Some claim that on still nights, when the air is heavy and the moon is hidden, you can hear faint splashes, the slow rhythm of a swimmer's strokes. And sometimes, just before the ripples fade, they say the water begins to move toward the shore. Even when there is no wind, would you dare to swim in it?